This is Eddie Hearn, Matchroom Boxing. You are watching Sporting Icons. You don't need to be anywhere else.
Now, I was thinking, what is an impressive resume? What is it that makes me say this fighter is good, he's a warrior, and all that kind of thing? And I've kind of compiled a little list, and I want to give you my top 10 current heavyweights who I believe are the best, as in they have the best resumes out there. Now, to have a great resume for me doesn't necessarily mean you have to win, okay? And it's about the whole warrior's code, as Chris Eubank would put it, that you're willing to step in and get tested and try and give the fans the best fights that you possibly can, and of course trying to achieve yourself. Now, going 50, 60, 70 fights undefeated, knocking out every single one of them, is not that impressive. It looks good on paper, but it's not that impressive when you really break it down, because who is it that you've beaten? That's what's important to me. Now, I've done this on a bit of a point system as well, and you get 1 point, as in a fighter will get 1 point from me, because this whole top 10 is a point system for me. So some of it is subjective, no doubt about it, but a lot of it is factual and stats. So bear with me until the very end. Now, some people are not going to agree just because maybe you want somebody to be number one or in the top 5, whatever. And because if they're not, maybe you're going to see this as a bit of that's ridiculous. I want him to be number one. I believe he's number one, so therefore he should be number one. Well, it doesn't work that way, unfortunately. And my list actually surprised me. Some people finished higher than I thought, and others finished lower than what I thought, just based on my own criteria when I really looked at it. So, again, this is a point system. So for a fighter, he'll get 1 point for beating a guy who was either a former world champion, a current world champion, or become a world champion thereafter their fight. And again, it doesn't matter to me whether or not, let's say for example, Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua, they both beat Vladimir Klitschko. He was a 3-time world champion and held multiple belts, but that's still only 1 point, okay? You don't get a point for each belt. So again, if I really wanted to be giving, say, Anthony Joshua or Tyson Fury favours, I would kind of go, you know what, 1 point for each belt, and that will boost up their numbers, right? But I want to keep it fair. There's no bias in any of this one, and I've kept it very, very real, or as real as I can. So 1 point for a former champion, current champion, as in they beat them for their title, or they went on to become a champion after. And 1 point for a top-rated name. Now, to be a top-rated name, again, this is pretty much the whole backbone of this video, which is you have to try, okay? So you have to step up and take on people who maybe some fans will go, you know what, that person really stepped up. He could have lost that fight. Potentially, it's a 50-50 fight, or I favour that person, but it's still dangerous. It's that kind of thing. So even if you was to lose, you know what, at least you tried. That's pretty much what I'm trying to say. So you get another point as well for actually stepping up. But to be a top-rated name, the general boxing public have to know who that person is. You don't have to rate them very high at all, but the majority of boxing fans out there will know who it is that you're fighting, if you are the fighter, of course. Another one, you get 1 point for every undefeated fighter that you fought and beat. Now, granted, there are some circumstances. So the more fights you have, for example, Deontay Wilder, he's had 40 fights. So you would probably presume that he's beaten a few undefeated fighters. And we know a lot of them were light heavyweights and cruiserweights, for example, but they did make the heavyweight limit when they were undefeated, and Deontay Wilder took their cherry. He took their O. And the same for many other fighters as well. So you get 1 point for defeating an undefeated fighter. You get 1 point for beating somebody who is, as of today, a current top 15 ranked guy. And that's across the 4 sanctioning bodies. I haven't done it on BoxRec, I haven't done it on Ring Magazine. I've literally done WBC, WBA, IBF, and WBO. If that name appears somewhere in that top 15, they get a point because they are considered a very good opponent. That being, whether you agree with the ranking system of the sanctioning bodies or not, they are there for a reason, okay? And this is what everybody lives by. This is how people get the title shots, all that kind of thing. So that's pretty much why I did that one. And you get 1 point for stepping up against a dangerous top-rated opponent, as I've already explained, in a fight where people go, ooh, that's dangerous. I'm not too sure if they can win that one, and big up on them for taking that fight. So, with all that said, again, I don't expect you to agree with me, but if you agree with my point system, and the reason why I don't put in how many fights you've had and how many people you've knocked out compared to going on points with or whatever, again, because a whole lot of these people could well be complete trash bums. So that resume is not that impressive to me. Again, this is a personal thing. You guys do or comment however it is that you want to comment on it. So I'm going to start at number 10 and work my way up. And again, you might be surprised just based on my own point system as to who makes it in. So in at number 10, and you'll be surprised, and I thought this person would be a little bit higher, but Luis Ortiz is number 10. Luis Ortiz, he has never beaten somebody who's undefeated. Technically he did beat Katif Kaeld, but Luis Ortiz failed a PED test and that fight got changed to a no contest. So technically he's never beaten an undefeated fighter. He did have an opportunity to fight Deontay Wilder, who was also undefeated. Had he beaten him, then again he would have got a point for that one. He's never beaten a former world champion. I was surprised by that one. He generally never has. But he does get 1 point for stepping up. Again, this is pretty much the backbone of it. He stepped up and he tried to fight Deontay Wilder and he gave it all that he could. So he gets a point for that one. And he has beaten two well-known names. Bryant Jennings, who was 19-1 at the time. Okay, Bryant Jennings, he did come off a defeat to Vladimir Klitschko right before he took on Luis Ortiz, but still Bryant Jennings is a name that the boxing public know, and along with Tony Thompson. He was an old Tony Thompson, but again, people know who it is. Now, I didn't give many points for Malik Scott, purely because Malik Scott, for me, he's a guy who goes in there pretty much to lose or survive, and I don't rate that in a fighter at all. Now, he does get a point for Dave Allen, because whether you rate Dave Allen or not, Dave Allen is a legitimate name. People know who Dave Allen is. Like I said, it doesn't matter whether or not you rate him or not. He did get in there, and yes, Luis Ortiz was supposed to win that fight. But still, I'll give him a point for Dave Allen. So he gets a total of 4 points. So, again, not that good. I mean, to be honest, I expected him to do a whole lot more than that one, but you know, it's going to show that Luis Ortiz has never beaten an undefeated fighter. He's never beaten a former world champion and never been a world champion himself. So this whole boogeyman thing, where does it come from? Oh, it comes from Tyson Fury, but his resume isn't as good as maybe it should be. And again, if you look at his amateur career, he's never really achieved there either. But you don't get points for your amateur career. Now, in at number 9, Derek Chisora. Derek Chisora is currently 29 wins and 8 losses. You can say, but he hasn't really beaten too many people. And you are correct, but he gets a lot of points for trying, for being a warrior and getting in the ring. So he gets 2 points for defeating 2 undefeated fighters during his 37 fights. Okay, he gets 6 points for actually stepping up into fights that maybe he shouldn't have taken, or it was risky for him, but he got in the ring anyway. He gets a point for Tyson Fury, Robert Helenius, Vitaly Klitschko, David Haye, Kubrat Pulev, and Dillian Whyte. All of these fights he didn't have to take, but he did it because he's a damn warrior. So he gets 6 points for at least trying. And he's beaten one legitimate name, which is Carlos Takam. Okay, and of course he also gets another point as well, because Carlos Takam is currently a top 15 ranked WBC guy, ranked number 14. So Derek Chisora actually gets 10 points. And he doesn't get a point for Malik Scott. I know that he was the first person to defeat Malik Scott, where he knocked him out, but again, because Malik Scott is such a damn coward, ain't no way I'm giving him points for it. And he doesn't get a second point as well for trying against Tyson Fury. It's still one name. So against Tyson Fury, he only gets 1 point. And no, he doesn't get a point for Ajit Kabial either. I know he lost, it was for the European title, but we don't know how good Kabial is, and he's not exactly a well-known name, in my opinion at least anyway. And number 8, Carlos Takam. Carlos Takam is currently 35 wins, 5 losses and 1 draw. He's defeated 3 undefeated fighters in his career. I was going to give him 1 point because his 1 draw was against an undefeated guy, but I decided against it and just kept it as that he defeated 3 undefeated guys. So he gets 3 points. He's never beaten a former champion or a future champion, and he gets 4 points for stepping up against some risky fights, as in Derek Chisora in his last one. That was a 50-50 fight. You may argue that Carlos Takam was favoured to win that one, but still, it was a very, very risky fight. Anthony Joshua, Joseph Parker, and Alexander Povetkin, all risky fights that he didn't have to take. There was an opportunity, and he took them. So he gets 4 points for trying, and he's defeated 3 names that most boxing fans would have heard of. France Botha, yes, an ancient France Botha, but still, you all know him, right? Michael Grant, exactly the same scenario, and of course Tony Thompson. Yes, Carlos Takam was supposed to beat these 3 guys, but still, you know what? They are legitimate names, so he actually stepped up against names that people know. And number 7. And again, I expected this guy to be a little bit higher, but Kubrat Pulev, currently 25 wins, 1 defeat. He gets 1 point for defeating an undefeated fighter, which happened to be Alexander Ustinov, and he gets 1 point for actually stepping up. For me, he's only ever tried to step up 1 time in all of his fights, and that was actually against Vladimir Klitschko. He lost, but he gets points for stepping up and trying to seize the opportunity. He gets 2 points for beating 2 top 15 ranked opponents across all sanctioning bodies, which happened to be, one of them was Derek Chisora, who's currently number 11 ranked by the WBC, and Alexander Ustinov, who's currently ranked number 10 by the WBA. And he gets 4 points for defeating 4 decent names. Tony Thompson is one of them. As I said before, Samuel Peter. You all know Samuel Peter, surely. Derek Chisora and Alexander Ustinov. I was going to give him another one for Michael Sprott, as he is a 2-time prize fighter winner. But I thought, well, do people really know Michael Sprott? I mean, I know him, and I'm sure a lot of you guys do, but I think probably most boxing fans probably wouldn't. So anyway, Kubrat Pulev, he gets a total of 10 points, exactly the same as Carlos Takam. Now, in at number 6, again, this may surprise some people and maybe upset a few people because you want him to be higher, but unfortunately, he's not. Tyson Fury, currently 26-0. Current lineal heavyweight champion, former WBO, IBF, IBO, and Super WBA, along with the Ring Magazine. Of course, he lost all those titles by either vacating or being stripped. But regardless of all that, he gets 1 point for actually taking a step-up fight. I was going to give him one for Derek Chisora, but I think at that time, Derek Chisora was on a bit of a down low at the time. So I'll give it to him for Vladimir Klitschko. In a fight that he was probably supposed to lose, he ended up winning it, but he gets a point for stepping up. And he gets 4 points for defeating 4 undefeated fighters. One of them, again, was Derek Chisora the first time round. He's beaten 1 former world champion or current world champion in Vladimir Klitschko, and he gets 2 points for beating 2 current top 15 ranked opponents. Derek Chisora, number 11 by the WBC, and Christian Hammer, ranked number 9 by the WBA. You know what, I'm actually going to give him 1 more point for stepping up, I think, which is Derek Chisora. I'm actually going to give him that one because, to be fair, Derek Chisora, I know he got dominated in both their fights, but he did actually, because Derek Chisora was undefeated, I'm actually going to give him an extra point for that one. So maybe it was a bit of a risky fight, to be fair. So 13 points, Tyson Fury. That still keeps him in 6th place. Now, we know that he's going to be fighting Deontay Wilder next in December after he should get through Francisco Pianeta. And if he was to defeat Deontay Wilder, then that's a whole bunch of points right there. Undefeated, champion, and a name. So 3 points, that'll make him 16 points. That actually moves him way up the rankings. Okay, so that 1 win will boost him up the rankings. Anyway, number 5, Joseph Parker, currently 24 wins and 2 losses. Those 2 losses, Anthony Joshua and Dillian Whyte. So he gets 2 points for defeating 2 undefeated fighters. and he gets 5 points for beating 5 decent names. Those 5 decent names are Hughie Fury, Andy Ruiz Jr., Carlos Takam, Alexander Dimitrenko, and again France Botha. So yeah, some of these guys, or a couple of these guys, he was supposed to beat in Dimitrenko and France Botha, but they are still decent names. And Carlos Takam was probably a bit of a risky fight. Andy Ruiz Jr. was certainly a risky fight, and so was Hughie Fury. Now you get 3 points for beating current top 15 ranked, where one of them is Hughie Fury, currently the number 2 IBF, Carlos Takam, currently 14 by WBC, and Alexander Dimitrenko, number 11 by the IBF, and he gets 4 points for taking risky fights, actually stepping up and willing to prove his salt. Anthony Joshua, Dillian Whyte, Andy Ruiz Jr. and Hughie Fury. So he gets a total of 14 points. And in at number 4, a guy who, to be honest, I expected to finish a little bit lower, but he surprised me. He finished 4th, Deontay Wilder. Currently 40-0, 39 by knockout. And again, I know a lot of people say, but he should be top because he's got more wins and he's undefeated and he's knocked out 39 of those 40. But look at who it is that he's defeated. Now, again, something surprised me on his record, which I didn't really look into too much prior to this. Now, he has beaten 2 champions. One of them, Bermane Stiverne, of course. Again, you only get 1 point because you don't get another point for beating him again in a rematch. It's the same guy. So he gets 1 point for Bermane Stiverne, who was the WBC champion when Deontay Wilder took that belt off him, and he beat a former champion in Zahari Lajkovic, who was the WBO world champion. And for those who don't really know who Lajkovic is, if you've ever seen the highlights of Deontay Wilder and you see one dude on the floor twitching, that's Lajkovic, okay? Where Deontay Wilder put him out cold. So he gets 2 points for beating 2 champions and 1 point for actually stepping up and trying. So out of these 40 fights, he stepped up 1 time against Luis Ortiz, which was a dangerous fight, or at least dangerous on paper. Now looking at the resumes here, with Luis Ortiz all the way down there, maybe not so much, but I was being kind and I gave him a point for Luis Ortiz, and he has defeated 7 undefeated fighters. Again, some of these were light heavyweights and cruiserweights at one point, but when they did fight Wilder, they were fighting at the heavyweight limit. So he gets 7 points for defeating 7 undefeated fighters and 4 points for decent names. Luis Ortiz, Bermane Stiverne, Chris Arreola, yes, he's actually a decent name, whether you rate him or not, and of course Audley Harrison. Again, a very decent name, as in people know who he is, rate him or not. He was a former Olympian medalist now, of course. He doesn't get any points though for the Stiverne rematch, as I've already said. He gets no points for Arthur Spilka, Johan Duapa or Jared Washington. Again, people only really know those names because he defeated them, if that makes sense. So he kind of made them famous. So at the time, they weren't famous, so he doesn't get any points for those, but he gets 16 points. And equally on 16 points is Dillian Whyte, currently 24-1. And of course, you may say, well, why is it that you put Dillian Whyte as number 3 and not Deontay Wilder? I'll explain that in a minute. So Dillian Whyte is currently the WBC and WBO number 1. He's beaten 2 champions, exactly the same as Wilder, but his was, of course, Joseph Parker and Lucas Browne. Again, I know people are going to say, but he was the regular champion, that's not a real title. Well, officially, on paper, he was a world champion, no matter how you look at it. David Haye, exactly the same title he held, and Alexander Povetkin, and many others. And yes, it is a legitimate world title. Like it or not, I know people compare it to the WBC Silver or International or whatever else, but facts are it is a legitimate world title. It goes in the record books as Lucas Browne is a world champion. So he's defeated 2 of those, Browne and Parker. 5 points for beating 5 undefeated fighters in his 25 fights, which again, that's a pretty good statistic. And he's beaten 5 decent names. Lucas Browne, as I've already said, Derek Chisora, again, reasons that I've already explained. Robert Helenius, again, you all know of him. He'd only lost 1 fight previous to that, which was against Johan Duapa, and he was beating the hell out of Johan Duapa, and Duapa just clipped him, and he went down, head over the ropes, and that was pretty much it for him. But he was tipped to be the next Vladimir Klitschko. He was going to be the replacement for Vladimir Klitschko, and a very, very decent name, especially all across Europe, especially Finland and all that kind of area as well. He's a very, very popular guy. Whether you guys know him too much in America, it's irrelevant, but he's a very, very famous guy. So he gets point for Robert Helenius and Joseph Parker, of course. And he gets another one as well for Dave Allen. So he gets 5 points for 5 names. David Allen, again, very, very popular. Everybody knows who he is. Okay, he's more famous UK, granted. But he gets no points for Ian Lewison. So again, if I was going to be really biased, I would have given him a point for Ian Lewison. Ian Lewison is a relatively known fighter. And he's beaten 2 top 15 current ranked opponents, which is Derek Chisora, ranked number 11 by the WBC, and Joseph Parker, currently ranked number 6 by the WBC. So again, he gets 16 points, exactly the same as Deontay Wilder. Now, I put him above Wilder, and again, none of this list is about who can beat who. It's not even about that. But I did it because I rate those higher who actually step up, who actually take risks in fights where many people say they're going to lose. Many people picked Lucas Browne, Joseph Parker, Robert Helenius, and even Derek Chisora to beat Dillian Whyte. Okay? And of course, he stepped in there with Anthony Joshua. So for me, I mean, I gave him like a couple of points for trying against Joshua and Parker as well. Again, fights he didn't have to take. I could have given him more points for Lucas Browne, Chisora, and Helenius, but I didn't. So if I really want to be biased, I would have given him a few more points for that, but I didn't. Either way, he's on 16 points, same as Wilder, but I put him in 3rd place rather than 4th place because he stepped up and he showed warrior spirit. In at number 2, Anthony Joshua. Again, if I really want to be biased, I could have given him a few more points for certain things, and that would have made him number 1. But no, I kept it as honest as I could. And of course, Anthony Joshua is the current Super WBA World Heavyweight Champion, IBF, Super WBO. If you don't know about the super status of WBO, go check out a video from a couple of days ago to find out about that one. And he's the IBO World Champion as well. And of course, 2012 Olympic gold medalist at Super Heavyweight. So he gets 3 points for stepping up. Vladimir Klitschko, Joseph Parker, and Dillian Whyte. All of these fights were risky at the time that he took them, but he stepped up, and he showed a lot of soul. Even if he'd have lost those fights, or any of those fights, he would have still got 3 points for me. Again, I could have given him another one for Charles Martin, because a lot of people were picking Charles Martin to win, didn't really know too much about him. He was southpaw, he was awkward, maybe it's too early for Joshua to take a world title shot, but I didn't give him a point for Charles Martin. But he does get 3 points for beating 3 world champions, former, past or present, whatever it may be, in Vladimir Klitschko, Charles Martin, and Joseph Parker. And he gets 5 points for beating 5 decent names: Dillian Whyte, Carlos Takam, Dominic Breazeale, Vladimir Klitschko, and Joseph Parker. Now, I know some people say, well, why Dominic Breazeale? Well, he's currently number 2 by the WBC, a guy that looks like could well be fighting Wilder next before he goes on to fight Tyson Fury, potentially in that anyway. And he's a name. Again, I could say Charles Martin. Everybody knows Charles Martin, but again, I didn't give him Charles Martin. But he does get 6 points for defeating 6 undefeated fighters and 5 current top 15 ranked opponents. Dillian Whyte, number 1 by the WBC and the WBO, but again, he only gets 1 point because it's one person. Carlos Takam, currently 14 by the WBC and number 6 by the IBF. And Charles Martin, who is currently number 8 in the WBC. Dominic Breazeale, currently 2 by the WBC. And Joseph Parker, currently ranked 6 by the WBC also. So Anthony Joshua gets 22 points. As you can see, I could have given him a few more points if I really want to be generous. But in at number 1, Alexander Povetkin. Now, automatically people say, but Povetkin, he lost to Vladimir Klitschko. Anthony Joshua beat Klitschko, so therefore he should be above him. It doesn't work that way. One name does not change an entire resume. It really doesn't. Just because Joshua beat Klitschko and Klitschko beat Povetkin, it doesn't mean that Joshua gets all of Vladimir Klitschko's souls, including and Alexander Povetkin. It's not Mortal Kombat, it's not Shang Tsung. It doesn't work that way. So Alexander Povetkin, currently 34-1, former WBA world champion. Again, we're not going to get into that one. And 2004 Olympic super heavyweight gold medalist. He's beaten 5 former, present or future world champions. Chris Bird, he beat him, who was a former WBO and IBF world champion, and Ruslan Chagayev, WBA world champion. Marco Huck, who is a WBO cruiserweight champion, granted, but he did fight him at heavyweight. Hasim Rahman, IBF, WBO and WBC heavyweight champion after he defeated Lennox Lewis, of course, and the current WBA regular world champion in Manuel Cha. So he gets 5 points for them ones. And he gets 4 points as well for beating current top 15 ranked guys, which are Carlos Takam, number 14 by WBC, 6 by the IBF. Christian Hammer, number 9 by the WBA. And I forget who the other ones are. Anyway, yeah, 4 points for the current top 15. Anyway, I didn't make the note of who the other ones were. Anyway, and he gets 2 points for trying as well, Vladimir Klitschko and Ruslan Chagayev. Ruslan Chagayev was a dangerous opponent, and a lot of people were picking Chagayev to beat Povetkin at that time. And he gets a whole bunch of points, 8 points to be precise, for top names. Chris Bird, he's a very popular name. Obviously, he defeated Vitaly Klitschko and Evander Holyfield. Ruslan Chagayev, former WBA world champion, beat John Ruiz, Nikolai Valuev. I could say Fraser Quendo, but let's probably leave that one out there. And Hasim Rahman, of course, defeated Lennox Lewis, Corey Sanders, Trevor Berbick, Monty Barrett, and so on. And again, somebody else, I forget who it was. Manuel Cha, Carlos Takam, Marius Wack, David Price, again, everybody knows him, and Christian Hammer. So I gave him no points though for Rudenko, Alexander Wojcik, even though Wojcik was, Andre Wojcik, he was undefeated. He was 30-0 at the time. But I didn't give any point for Wojcik. For those who don't know Wojcik, he was supposed to be Deontay Wilder's opponent, but he tested positive, and he gets no point for beating Mike Perez, even though he was a 2011 prize fighter winner. But Alexander Povetkin finished on 22 points, exactly the same as Joshua. But again, I gave him the edge over Joshua as far as resumes go because he's defeated more well-known names. Okay, granted, he's been around for a lot longer. So you probably could argue the fact, well, Joshua's had less fights, so therefore that's more impressive. And you know what, I really can't disagree with it, but I'll show my unbiased by giving it to Alexander Povetkin. And I could have given him a few more points as well. Mike Perez, he is a pretty decent name. Rudenko, of course, as well. So anyway, that is it. Alexander Povetkin is the number 1 in my opinion, and as far as my little stats go anyway. So again, I know a lot of people may not agree with it. Some of you may agree with it. Dependent, of course, you drop your criteria below. As I said, my criteria was beating a champion, get a point. You get a point for a top rated name. Because for me, it's all about stepping up, willing to give the fights, or the fans, the big fights. That's what's really interesting for me. And I don't care, you can go on a 100-fight winning streak, I don't care. But if you're fighting cans of baked beans, I don't care. Okay, I'm only interested when you step up and get into fights where it's risky for not only you, but also for the opponent. But anyway, you drop your thoughts below, click that thumbs up, subscribe, catch you all on the next video.